My boyfriend has made some comments about my friends' bodies recently, calling them petite or skinny. I don't know what he was thinking saying that your body specifically looks like a video game character. Does this deserve a follow-up conversation, or should I just look inward to move past it? What is that internal voice saying to you? Is it telling you that you're not loved, that you're not special? I'm scared to get engaged and tie my finances to him because I frankly don't trust him with my money. And then there's like capital P problems, such as my boyfriend has spent $80,000 and isn't being honest about where that money went. Good morning and welcome back to the Hello Hayes podcast. I don't know if it's morning where you are, but it's morning where I am, which is why I'm in my cozy wozy robe. I got my coffee, I lit a candle. I'm all into the morning routine these days, or not so much maybe it's the morning routine. I was going to say I'm trying to set more routines for different things that I do. I always rejected the idea that I was a routine girl, but I think I'm embracing the idea that I'm a routine girl. Maybe my 30s are about embracing my true routine girl identity. Anyway, for the reason we're all here today, we're talking about hard conversations in this advice column episode. We're doing 3 different letters that all center on whether we should address this hard thing that we've been sweeping under the rug, whether we should address it, how we should address it. And while all 3 letters have to do with a hard conversation, there's also some interesting similar undertones that I noticed of unspoken expectations and self-advocacy and fairness. A common, a thread that kept coming up is am I even valid to feel this way? Is this a me problem or is it a them problem? And I love that element of reflection was in here because you guys know I do always believe that we have a role to play in the situations we find ourselves in. And I'm really excited to dive into it. The first letter features someone whose boyfriend has been making lots of comments about her weight. And if you'd like to skip this one, it does reference weight gain and body dysmorphia, though we don't get into any specifics with numbers or anything like that. However, I'm still flagging it for you in case you'd like to skip ahead. Check out the timestamps for when letter 2 begins. And letter 2 is about someone who is planning on getting engaged soon. Boyfriend has the ring, but in recent financial conversations has learned he's spent quite a large sum of money, and now she's having second thoughts. And the third letter is about friendship and celebration and how to communicate to someone you care about that you're disappointed they're not showing up for you on your special day in the same way you've shown up for them. Very relatable, very real. And now let's begin. All right, letter 1. Hello, Hayes. My boyfriend has made some comments about my friends' bodies recently, calling them petite or skinny, and though he's not intending to compare them to me, it's really bothering me. For the past 10 years, I've struggled with, at times, debilitating body dysmorphia and disordered eating. I've never been properly diagnosed or hospitalized as a result of my behavior/condition, and I've grown and tried to accept and employ healthier relationships with food, all while trying to live a balanced life. I'm 28 now, and I've gained some weight with no change to my lifestyle, and while I'm aware that it's perfectly normal, it's difficult to accept the change. In the past 6 months, I've also begun dating my boyfriend. I've been open with him about my struggles without an abundance of detail. He's generally accepting and tries to be affirming and loving. Recently, though, he's made offhand comments about my body that he believes to be compliments, as well as references about my friends. Like the other day, he told me that my body type reminded him of a certain video game character. When he showed me, I felt really uncomfortable because this character doesn't look anything like what I thought I looked like or what I desire to look like. One of the facets of my body dysmorphia is being unable to place how I look and becoming obsessive with how others perceive me. I know he wouldn't have said it if he didn't think it was a compliment, and he's reiterated how attractive he finds me, but I'm frustrated that he would even go there knowing this is a sensitive topic. And not for nothing, he's also the first person who has seen me in any intimate way since my early 20s, and none of this is making it any easier to accept my changing body and stay emotionally sound. I can't stop thinking about it. My immature instinct is to pick a fight with him over it to satisfy my carnal desires. I just think it's funny that, but I know that's not the right course. Does this deserve a follow-up conversation, or should I just look inward to move past it? Yours, Growing Pains. Reading this letter made me think of this phrase, this inspirational quote that I actually don't find very inspirational, which is, no one can love you until you love yourself. I've been thinking a little bit about quotes that I want to debunk. And I think that's one of them. There's some merit. There's some, what I dislike about the quote is that it suggests that we alone are responsible for our happiness, our healing. It suggests that love only comes from within, when I think that love is cultivated in community and in connection. And I think there's I hate it. I hate the implication. I think that drives isolation and loneliness. And for a person who's already feeling unlovable, ugly, unlovable, stupid, whatever, that list of adjectives can go on, I don't think that's a particularly useful phrase. But there is perhaps some merit, which is that if there is something you don't love about yourself, if there's something you're insecure about, if there's something unresolved that you are not receiving help for, wherever that help can come from, a lot of different places, I think that thing can show up in your relationships, and it's like a little goblin that can come out and can try to sabotage the places where you are loved and where you do receive love. Like the other night, I was sort of in my head I've been a little bit in my head about the way I look. And I was sitting in bed and I said to Brian came out, he was brushing his teeth, or he had finished brushing his teeth. And I said something like, what do I do about this part of my body? I don't like this part of my body. And I referenced a part of my body, and I was sort of touching it and squeezing it in a weird way. And he looked at me and he's like, I don't like this conversation. This conversation is not nice. And then changed the topic. But why I was doing that, I was probably egging him on. I was looking for confirmation. I was looking for him to say something like, oh, well, maybe you can do this type of exercise, or you could do this type of thing. And he didn't say that, because we've been together for 10 years and we've worked through how to talk about some of these things. There are times when he has said things in response to my egging him on, or not even intentionally egging him on, but like there are times when he's said stuff that hasn't been helpful. And we've had to figure out how to work around that. So as soon as he said, that's mean, shut the conversation down, I appreciated that. I appreciated that he stepped in. I appreciated that he stepped in to shut it down, because that's what partners do. And I think that's an example of how, like, you don't need to completely love yourself to be loved, but you do probably need to be aware of your mishigas and be getting help for the things that you need help on to be in a healthy relationship. There's a point in my life when I probably would not have been able to end that conversation. I would have continued to egg him on. I would have maybe gotten in a fight. I say all of that. I say all of that because both to inspire that because I think that disordered eating, body dysmorphia, body image stuff, it can make you feel like you are unlovable and you will never be loved and nobody will ever understand. But that's not true. It is something that you're going to have to work on, because we do live in a world of bodies and people talk about bodies and food. And I want you, and I believe that you can live in this world and take up space without being consumed by these thoughts and without being triggered to the point of argument anytime someone says something that's a little bit wrong. I want you to have hope that you can get there, and you will get there. So first, actually, I want to talk about the body dysmorphia and disordered eating. You referenced, I'm talking now directly to the letter writer, but also directly to anybody who maybe uses some of these phrases or suspects that they might struggle with something specific but has never been diagnosed or has never seen a professional about it. I want you to see a professional about it. I want you to see a professional about it. I'm not accusing you of, what I'm not doing is I'm not accusing you of using terms flippantly. I don't think you're using the term as like I have body dysmorphia, I have disordered eating, which some people do. Some people do use those terms kind of incorrectly, inappropriately, whatever, which is another topic. I do want you to take yourself seriously enough to talk to a professional about this, because if you are struggling, it's not even if you are struggling, you are struggling. The thoughts you have about your body and food are interfering with your relationships. That to me is always a sign that I am out of my, what's the phrase I'm looking for? I'm out of my league. I'm out of my element here. I've done what I can do alone to work on this, and now I need to call in some extra support, some extra help. And once your food stuff is interfering with your relationships, it can be as insignificant seeming as you don't want to go out to dinner with your friends because you're worried about sharing whatever dishes. If it's interfering with your ability to live your life fully with people you love, that's time to call in some support. And if you do have, a diagnosable condition, you owe it to yourself to get the targeted support for that condition. Targeted support is beyond reading self-help books or listening to videos and getting tips from people on the internet. There's nothing wrong with needing a little extra help. A little extra help is the reason. I mean, I had a lot of extra help, but like a little extra help is the reason that I can say that I still struggle with disordered body thoughts sometimes, but have not had an issue with my behavior in over 10 years. That is like a huge thing that I would not have accomplished had I not worked with a professional to uncover where some of this was coming from, where some of this like desire to control and whatever was coming from. So I do want to say that to you. I know last week we talked about like me not using therapy as a thing I reference in advice giving, but like in this case, I would recommend talking to your primary care doctor. That could be one way to get a good recommendation. Look on like Psychology Today. I think I would definitely do that. So please do that. Let's segue now into talking about your boyfriend and what he said and how to deal with it. But I want to begin, I guess, by like talking about what we can expect from society and from people we're in relationships with as it relates to our bodies and really anything that we're insecure about that we'd like them to be sensitive with. The reality is that you live in a world where people are going to comment on other people's bodies. And there is a degree to which you are going to have to practice being able to tolerate those comments. You can't necessarily go through life asking everybody to change around you to protect your feelings. What I would work on probably with my therapist or my team in recovery is what do I do in situations when people around me are eating and talking about food in a way that's triggering? It's my responsibility, with the help of my team and my loved ones, to build up exposure to that. That's why exposure therapy exists. Exposure therapy is like you do little baby steps to put yourself in positions that are triggering for you so that you build up resilience to it. You build up like immunity almost. So the more you do it, the easier it's going to get. It's a shitty reality that people comment on other people's bodies, but we do live in that world. And my hope for you and a goal for you is to not let it derail you. But that brings it back to the boyfriend. And like, while it's not realistic to hope that society at large is going to change. I mean, we can hope the society is going to change, and we do all play a role in, positive growth. And there are things you can do as an individual to push the positive narrative forward and, do all of that. But it's not necessarily realistic that tomorrow the world's going to change. What I do think you can expect the person you're in a relationship with and the closest people around you, I do think you can expect to work with them so that they help create a safe inner world for you. All of that's to say, I do think you can expect your boyfriend to be better at this. Now, he might need to learn. He might need to learn how to be better at this. And a 6-month boyfriend, you said that you've shared with him a little bit, but you have not gone into detail. Like, he might not know. He might not know what to do. And I would go as far to say he probably doesn't understand this issue. He probably doesn't understand the issue. And you're going to have to try to explain it to him. I don't know what he was thinking saying that your body specifically looks like a video game character. It's one thing to say, you remind me of this character. This character reminds me of you, and it always makes me smile when I'm playing the game. Even that's a little bit dicey because it is a video game character, but if he loves video games and he's attracted and he thinks that character's hot in whatever way, that's your boyfriend. Like, if that's your boyfriend's personality, do you love that? Like, do you love that about him or not? Like, if he's the type of person who like feels that way about video game characters, that's probably a quirk to him. And I'm curious if that's something you like about him, like if that's a personality trait of his that you like. Regardless, though, it seems like your boyfriend needs to be really explicitly told, I don't want you to make comments about my body. And I also don't want you to make comments about my friends' bodies. Here's why. And then explain to him why. I struggle with body dysmorphia, and I'm going to start getting help for that. It's been an issue I've dealt with for the last 10 years, but I see how it's impacting my self-worth and our relationship, so I'm going to start getting help. It doesn't really matter that his intentions are good and that he's saying it because he thinks it's helpful. Like, this is a slightly different topic, but like a big thing I've had to figure out with Brian is like what's helpful for him in a moment of stress is not helpful for me, actually. We deal with stress differently. And a big thing we've had to learn is like sometimes when I've been in a really stressed out, upset, destabilized state, like there were points last year where Brian's way of trying to help me was like, let's come up with a plan. He would be like, a little example is like, have you gone for a walk yet today? Or have you done, insert any specific thing that does help me, that we both know does help me. But when I'm in a wildly stressed out state, him coming in and making a suggestion about what I should do is not helpful for me. It feels like another thing to add to my to-do list. And it makes me, I get angry, I get irate, I become more despondent. And for a while, we didn't realize that was happening. I just was feeling frustrated with him, and then he was feeling frustrated because I wasn't accepting his help, and we were in this cycle. And then when I was talking about this with my therapist, she pointed out, it sounds like you guys have different ways of like finding stability. And it's true. Brian likes to come up with a plan and then implement the plan. Whereas when I'm in that moment, just like need to be kind of held for a moment. And like, I need to just be listened to. And then once I'm calm, then we can get into planning. But I had to explain that to him. And I had to explicitly say, you and I deal with this topic differently. What I need from you in this moment is this. And then we can get into the thing you're really good at, which is planning. Once you've sort of listened to me, and once I've just kind of let it out, and once I've found my breath and blah, 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 then we can get into planning. So you and your boyfriend might need to have that type of conversation. Now, he might not, 6 months in, like he might not be the guy for you. There is that chance. He might not have the depth. He might not be willing. He might not want to stretch and learn about how to be a better partner to you while you're navigating this. There is that risk, right? It's an interesting question of like partner versus boyfriend versus whatever. Like I think a partner does step up, and a partner is willing to bend their ways of communicating and think differently than they were raised, maybe, so that they can be better, be more supportive to you. And we'll see if he wants to do that. I don't think it's crazy for right now, though, for you to say, while I'm in this stage, I need you to not comment on my body or other people's bodies. What type of, like, in what way was he commenting on your friends' bodies? I'm like trying to think about in what world that would be appropriate. Like, was he describing them to someone else? Like, oh, Rachel, like she's short, skinny. Or is he like, oh, hey, like Rachel's looking extra petite these days? Like, that's very weird. I think it's weird. Maybe he was saying it in a way. I'm sure there are other ways to comment on people's bodies or people's size that's like a little more appropriate, but also like, let's just stop commenting on people's bodies. Let's stop commenting on people's bodies. I saw a TikTok yesterday about like Tate McRae, and it's like a close-up of Tate McRae dancing and like fucking killing it on stage. Obviously, she's a pop star. She's incredible. She's so talented. And the text was like, let's stop honoring thinness, and instead, like, we want bodies like this. What the fuck? What the fuck? Why are we talking about Tate McRae's body at all? Why are you comparing her at all? What? I actually couldn't believe it, because whoever made this video, whatever idiot made this video, clearly thinks that they're like doing something positive, like they're doing, they're contributing to the movement, and they're fucking not. Like, they are just adding to it. And in a way, right now, your boyfriend comparing your body to anything, even if he thinks he's being positive, it's not doing a positive for you. Right? So him comparing you to someone who he thinks is hot, specifically talking about your body, it's not helping you. And he needs to be explicitly told that. We'll see what he does with that information. Don't pick a fight. Don't do the, I just think it's funny that, don't do that. Be earnest here. I think this is a time right now for earnestness. Give him the benefit of the doubt if you feel he's earned that. I know that you're trying to amp me up when you say XYZ, but I'm not receiving it in my brain right now that way. And if there's something helpful he could be doing instead, like if there is a certain type of compliment that you would like to receive, you could tell him that. Like, you could help like redirect his complimenting energy a little bit. Like, it's great. Like, I love that you are attracted to me and that you're vocal about it. It would be helpful if you could redirect some of that so it's not about my body and it's instead about my face or something. And I know it might feel a little cringe and silly to do that, but if he's earned that from If he's like earned your love and respect and you want to make it work, I think being as explicit as possible in this relationship is worth it right now. So all of that's to say, like at the end of the letter, you asked me that explicit question. Does this deserve a follow-up question, or should I look inward to move past it? I think it's both. I think it deserves the follow-up question, but the looking inward part is the realization that I am going to exist in my body and in this world for, God willing, a long time. It is on me to figure out how to have better coping mechanisms for when I feel triggered about my body. It's on me. Right now, I know that I need a little extra help. So it's on me to do that. And it's also on me to communicate with the people that I love the most without putting the responsibility on them to fix me. Because with stuff like this, it's no one's responsibility but yours. And the hard truth is that you are not going to get better unless you put in the work to get better. And putting in the work does include surrounding yourself with people who are respectful, who want to support you. It might mean removing people from your life who are not on the journey, who don't want to support you, who don't even care about examining what they say and how they behave. Because so many people in this world have a fucked up relationship with food in their body, and not a lot of them want to be aware of it. Like, not a lot of people are aware of it. And I've been stunned recently on the internet as I've just been like consuming content like the rest of us about how we've like slipped back into this obsession with thinness. And people who I think are smart, post things and say things. And I'm like, what the fuck are you thinking? Like, are you not noticing how you're becoming brainwashed again by this obsession with thinness? Are you not noticing it, or have you never been aware of it and you've never grappled with it at all? So now that it's popular again, it's just naturally showing up. Man, there's a lot there, but thank you for writing. I clearly feel passionately about this. So I'm glad that you wrote in Growing Pains. I love you, and keep me posted. You got this. It's not going to be this way forever, okay? Okay, next letter. Hello, Hayes. My boyfriend and I have started having some serious conversations about finances, and I recently learned that he's overspent $80,000 in the last year and saved nothing. We've been together for 4 years and are about to get engaged soon. Like, I know he has the ring. I have literally no idea how he could have outspent me by close to $100,000, as the only major expense he's had in the last year was $20,000 of student loans. He blamed the difference on some bad investments, eBay purchases, and overspending on Seamless. But those things don't explain how $80,000 could have disappeared over the course of 1 year. I'm scared to get engaged and tie my finances to him because I frankly don't trust him with my money, and I'm concerned there's something deeper going on that's causing him to overspend to such a large extent. I worry about our ability to buy a house or have kids, something we both want to do in the next 2 to 3 years. How do I bring this up further without pushing him to lie? How can I work with him to get his spending under control? Should I end our relationship over concerns that he's completely financially irresponsible? Or can I possibly delay the merging of our finances even if we're married? Should I be considering a prenup? Yours, Financially Scared. First thing I'll say, and this is really important, I don't ever think that you should get married when there is a problem before the engagement or before the marriage that you're hoping will be swept under the rug when the wedding comes. These types of problems, the ones that you want to sweep under the rug, that you're hoping will be fixed when you get engaged, when you get married, when you have a baby, they only are magnified when you sign a contract or when you do something that is binding, right? Such as getting married, having a child. Now, getting married, you can get a divorce, but look, there's always going to be problems in a relationship. There's always going to be, I don't even want to call them problems actually, because I don't know if that's true. I don't know if there's always problems in relationships. There's always going to be things you disagree on. There will always be challenges, disagreements, etc. And then there's like capital P problems, such as my boyfriend has spent $80,000 and isn't being honest about where that money went. Because I agree. eBay, I mean, maybe the eBay purchases, like depending on what he's buying, things can get very, very expensive, as with the bad investments. And he likely is feeling, maybe not likely, I don't want to put words in his mouth. I don't know how he feels. I don't know anything about his personality except for what you're saying here. I can imagine feeling quite a lot of shame about losing that amount of money to bad investments, to eBay purchases, whatever. And maybe he's not wanting to share that with you. So who knows if he's lying? Like, he might not be lying, but he's not being completely honest and open. And everyone has different perspectives on like what they want their financial relationship to be with a person they marry or a person they're with long term, but you have every right to want for your marriage, for your long-term relationship, to want to have full insight into where the money's going. Full insight. I would not get married until I feel resolved on this and until you have whatever answers you're looking for. What I'm saying, what I just said, and what I'm about to say is not financial advice. Let me be very clear with you on that. This is not financial advice, and I actually do think that you should go out and get some specific financial advice. I think you should seek out financial advice from a financial advisor. Maybe a family member can point you towards someone. If you have a credit card, I imagine, like, I'm going through what I would do. Like, if I have I have a Chase credit card, maybe I would call the Chase bank and I'd see if there's somebody I can be connected to there that manages, like, does some family wealth management, or I'm not using all the terms correctly, but I would definitely have a conversation with somebody about this. Maybe by myself, and also with my boyfriend, with my partner. Your questions are completely valid. Like, I'm so glad that you're thinking about this. And I think it's valid to feel scared. I don't think it's necessarily doomed. This brings up such an interesting question. I was just talking about this the other day with someone, and I'm forgetting who, of like, when you're in a long-term relationship, or you're in a committed relationship, and someone suddenly, or maybe not suddenly, is like going into a deep end in some way, and a behavior has emerged that is making it difficult for you to be in this relationship, like, whose responsibility is it to get better and to, like, get help? I think where I stand on that is, like, in a long-term partnership where you've sort of pledged your partnership, I think it's always the individual's responsibility to get better and to want to get better. Like, let's say he has a gambling addiction. I don't know if that's true. I'm not saying that's true, but that is one common source of people spending money in irresponsible ways. So let's say he has a gambling addiction. It is his responsibility to want to get better from that gambling addiction and to be serious about getting help. You cannot convince him to get the help. You might be an inspiration to him to get the help, a reason for him wanting to be better, to change his behavior. But if he doesn't want to change, it's not your responsibility to change him. It's not your responsibility because it's impossible. Like, that's not how, I don't think that's how behavior change works, especially with like addiction. And I don't want to keep talking about addiction because we don't know if that's an issue here, but if your boyfriend has irresponsible spending, has spent $80,000 and isn't being upfront about where that's going, like, you won't be able to change his behavior next year magically by getting married. But you might be able to help facilitate the change. Like, he might, if you just said to him, you need to figure this out or we're not going to be together, he might actually not have the tools and not know where to even begin. So a way that you could help is by coming up with suggestions and helping facilitate, maybe if there's a specific therapist he needs to see, you can help him find that person. And maybe through something like couples counseling, you could learn specific ways to support him if that's something that's needed. I don't want to go too far. Like, we don't know where $80,000, that was quite a lot of money to lose. $80,000 is a lot of money to lose, but also in like, look, I don't know what your financial situation is. Like, $80,000 is a lot to lose. It sounds like $80,000 is a lot to lose. I'm questioning myself because, like, with the stock market, like, depending on how much money you have in the stock market, like, it kind of goes up and down. But this doesn't really sound like that's the situation here. But maybe, talking with a financial advisor would give you some clarity on what these numbers mean in the larger context of the money that he has, that you have, et cetera. I think it's really great that you want to bring this up without causing him to lie. And I think the part of it is, if he's feeling shame about this and he's wanting to keep it a secret from you, you could say something in the most perfect way, unjudgmental way, and he might still perceive it as a judgment. I'm saying that as someone who has felt insecurity and shame about some of my own behaviors. And then when the behaviors are brought up to me, I overreact and I project my insecurity onto the person asking me, right? I think they're being judgmental when they actually said it in a really nice way. So I want you to know that. Like, we can talk about, and I think there are specific things that you can do and not do. But even if you do it perfectly, there's a chance that he might react in a way that isn't what you want. I think it's fair to say, I love you and I want to spend my life with you. I feel concerned over the spending. But what I feel concerned about is that it doesn't feel like we're on a team right now. And it's really important to me that we're on a team about everything, including our finances. I want to help, but I can't help if I don't have the information. Can we talk about what happened with this money? I want to have a completely honest conversation about it. I love you, and I'm here. We're partners here. And I'm curious, like, when you financially scared hear me say that, what does that sound true to you? Do you feel that way? Do you feel like we are a partnership and I want to help and I want to be a part of this no matter what the situation is? I'm curious if that sparks anything for you. If you're like, actually, I don't know if I feel that way. I don't know if I feel that way about this man. Or is it like, yes, that's exactly how I feel. Pay attention to how you're feeling in your body. Like when you heard me say that. What I wouldn't do is be like, you lied to me. You lied to me. There's a subtle difference between I want us to have an honest conversation about this where everything is on the table versus you lied. One is accusatory. You lied is accusatory, whereas the other is sort of starting fresh by highlighting what you want, not by pointing out the flaw, right? He already is going to feel flawed probably, so we don't need to point that out further in this conversation. So you said, how can I work with him to get his spending under control? Well, that goes back to like, whose responsibility is this? That's a big responsibility. Like, depending on the scope of what the problem is, he might need support outside of you. You might, and if not, maybe the two of you come up with rules together of like what he can spend and what he can't. But do you want that? It's fair to not want that. It's completely fair to not want that. And I think you maybe need to think and have some clarity for yourself of like, what type of relationship do I want? What kind of life do I want? And it would be completely fair to say, I'm not going to get married until we either fix this or we decide that we're not compatible. And then you said, should I be considering, can I possibly delay the merging of our finances even if we're married? And should I be considering a prenup? You can delay the merging of your finances when you're married. Like, there's no one way to do finances when you're married. Like, every relationship can handle money the way that works best for them. There are no rules. But if you're going into the relationship and if you're going into the marriage concerned about money, and because of the concern you want to delay, like, that's not a reason. I don't think you should not merge your finances because you're scared. Keep them separate out of a place of confidence, not out of a place of fear. There's a huge, huge difference. The same thing with a prenup. If you think about it, I know prenups are a really complicated conversation for a lot of people. And I'm not one of the people who's like, you should automatically get a prenup. Like, everyone should have prenups. I don't necessarily feel that way. I think it's worth having conversations and every couple should do what's right for them. But I don't think that prenups are a bad thing. Like, marriage is also, I think people get really hung up on prenups because it's like the contractual element and you're assuming the relationship's going to fail. I don't really see it that way. Marriage itself is a contract. So if you're willing to do the contract of getting married, why are you suddenly triggered by the financial contract? And I get why. There's lots of emotions tied up in money and divorce and all of that. But yeah, I would consider a prenup. Again, I would talk to a financial advisor and have some like professional advice conversations about money. But definitely, if I needed a prenup because of how concerned I already am about the financial instability and the financial problems here, I would be questioning that marriage. Personally, I would get a prenup out of confidence, right? The prenup would need to be a decision that I made from a place of confidence, not out of a place of fear. And I guess some people might say that prenups are always from fear, but I don't think that's true. I actually don't think that's true at all. I do want to say that I'm really proud of you for addressing this. It's really hard, especially like if he already has a ring and you've already made plans for the engagement and all of that. It's really hard to stop the bus when things are rolling. Even when, like, there have been so many times in my life when I've known I needed to stop the bus and I didn't, because it almost felt easier to just keep spinning downhill, right? Like to keep toppling down the hill than to stop and walk back up, right? It's like you feel like you're choosing between two evils. Like, do I just keep doing the comfortable thing, even though I know it's an absolute train wreck? Or do I stop? And maybe in the long term, I'm going to be better, but it's going to feel really, really hard right now. I'm proud of you for writing this letter and for asking these questions, because like your future, what you're doing is protecting your future self, and your future self thanks you. Your future self thanks you for doing the hard thing right now. Okay, I love you. Hello, Hayes. I'm turning 30 in a few months and having a weekend trip with close friends. I hate asking people to spend money on me, so I'm doing it at my childhood cabin upstate. I'm single, and almost all of my friends are engaged, married, or in long-term relationships. And there's definitely some sensitivity around that, almost bitterness that they all have their person who will ensure they have a special birthday, whereas I have to do that for myself. There's also a frustration that I show up with bells and whistles for every bachelorette, shower, and wedding, and don't get the same magnitude of attention in return. For the most part, I feel like I surround myself with people who are committed to celebrating women for accomplishments beyond marriage and babies. I graduated from law school 2 years ago, for example, and several of my closest friends did come to graduation, so it's not fair to say that I haven't been on the receiving end of any fun celebrations, but certainly not to the degree that it would be if I were getting married. One friend didn't come to my graduation 2 years ago, though, because she couldn't swing the flight or PTO. Totally fair. Since then, I went to her bachelorette trip the weekend after I took the bar exam, and took several days off and spent thousands of dollars to go to her wedding abroad. She told me last week that she won't be able to come to my birthday because her in-laws will be in town, though she said to let her know if I end up going with a different weekend. There were a couple other friends with conflicts that original weekend, so I pushed it back a week. I just told that friend, and she said the in-laws would still be in town, so she still couldn't come. I'm honestly really disappointed. I've made showing up for her such a priority. Not that friendship is or should be transactional, but this feels really unbalanced. This isn't a friend I've ever had to work through conflict with, so I'm not sure what to do. My natural inclination is to just be a bit distant and hope she catches on, but I know that's neither kind nor productive. I'd very much love some guidance on how to best navigate this, with the joint goals of being an understanding, flexible friend, but also communicating my disappointment. Yours, 30, flirty, and feeling forgotten. It's really, really hard. This is really disappointing. I understand why you're disappointed. And just to hype you up for a second, it sounds like you've been doing a really incredible job of showing up for your friends who are in relationships. It sounds like you've been doing an incredible job of showing up for them despite those feelings that you've been harboring, whether it's jealousy, resentment, bitterness. And those feelings are normal. I think what really kind of pulled at my heart a little bit is the birthday, the idea that they have somebody in their life. You think they have somebody in their life who is ensuring they have a special birthday, someone to celebrate with, whereas you have to figure that out for yourself. And I hear that. Birthdays are hard no matter your relationship status, and it's made easier. It is 100% made easier when there is one person in your life who can take on some of the load for you to think about how to make it a good day. So that's totally fucking valid. And for a birthday like 30, a milestone birthday, I'm proud of you since you want to. Like, I'm proud of you for going out of your way to make this special weekend and to do the cabin thing. That sounds so fucking fun. Like a cabin weekend would be my ideal way to celebrate someone. Like, I just went on a bachelorette and it was the most chill bachelorette ever. We went to a hotel in Mexico and it was like, that's my perfect idea of like a girls' weekend, is something chill. And so I would love to come. I would love to come to your cabin weekend. But I'm proud of you for doing that. And it's shitty that people who you hoped would come aren't coming. That's a really shitty feeling. Let's talk about that disappointment. Now, something that I try to do whenever I feel disappointed by somebody in my life, or disappointed by no matter how close we are, like if I'm feeling disappointed, rejected, angry by something someone has done, one of the practices that I do is I try to look at the situation and there's something I want to separate. I want to see if I can decouple, if I can separate my insecurity from the real thing that happened. Because sometimes our insecurity and reality can tangle and dance in a really complicated way. And sometimes both can be present. Like sometimes our insecurity can be making us react to something in an out of proportion way. and the thing that someone else did is shitty. Both things can be true. And even when both things are true, it's really essential for relationships and for ourself, like for our own sense of self, to decouple them. Like to actually see the situation in front of you, almost like it's like a movie scene, like to try to visualize it in front of you and actively pull out the things that are your insecurity, and then pull out the things that are actually shitty and that you have a real valid right to address and to be upset about. So if we do that for this situation, you have been honest about saying that you do feel some bitterness towards friends. You do feel some bitterness towards friends who are in relationships and just maybe some jealousy. Totally normal. So I do think that kind of background jealousy, that stage of life jealousy maybe, is in the background here. We can't deny that. It's there. There's also some specific resentment towards this friend for missing your graduation. You wouldn't have brought it up if you didn't have resentment about that. You remember it. You remember that she didn't come because of PTO. So there's some resentment there, and maybe there's some feeling like this friend doesn't care about me as much as I care about her. And a piece of proof is that she didn't come to graduation 2 years ago when other friends did. So maybe there's some insecurity there. Another insecurity could be, I put in more to this friendship than she puts into me. And here's another example of that. Here's another example of that. And I want you to think about, what do those insecurities around this friend specifically, and what do the resentments around celebrations and not being celebrated in the same way your friends who have been married are, what do those things make you feel about yourself? What is that internal voice saying to you? Is it telling you that you're not loved, that you're not special, that no one's ever gonna want to celebrate you? This is the same process that I go through when somebody does something to me that I take really personally and that I get upset about. Now, don't forget, that does not mean that they're off the hook. It doesn't mean that they didn't do something wrong, but it's sort of a side exercise that I think is really important. What is this feeling bringing up for you? What is it making you feel about yourself? Why does it feel so hard? Why does it feel so hard? And I want you to see if you can come up with any other reasons beyond this friendship isn't reciprocal. What's the feeling behind that? Once we separate that, that's over here. You say, okay, so that's there. Now can I look at this situation a little bit more objectively? Now that I've removed some of my insecurity from the situation, let's look at this objectively. Objectively, does it make sense that your friend can't come to your birthday party, your weekend birthday, because her in-laws are in town? Right off the bat, I think that I guess it depends on the relationship with her in-laws. You mentioned they had their wedding abroad, so maybe the in-laws only come in for a week once a year. Like maybe this was a trip that they had planned for a really long time. There are situations in which it's disappointing, yes, but it also makes sense. So I do think there's some validity in why she can't come potentially. But I also think, like you mentioned that when you first told her the weekend, she said, oh, I can't come because my in-laws are in town, but let me know if you change it. Maybe an answer that would have made you feel a little bit more supported and seen is, my in-laws are in town from X country from the 15th to the 30th. So I can't do anything there, but I can do the next month, or I can do these weekends. I really want to be there, but I completely understand if you pick one of those weekends. We'll celebrate sometime. We'll celebrate another time. Maybe if the friend had said something like that, you would feel different. So in here, it's like you have your insecurities, yes, which are influencing how you feel about this. But the reality is she was disinterested when she first told you that she couldn't be there. She didn't try to make any effort to be there. So then when you change the weekend to the next one and she couldn't come, like maybe it makes sense that she can't come because her in-laws are still in town from abroad. But why didn't she tell you that before? Why didn't she make any effort before to let you know when she was available? Maybe that's what's hurting your feelings. Maybe initially you were like, it's fucked up that she's choosing her in-laws over me, but maybe the real issue is that she didn't seem to care about trying to be there. And in the initial communication, she could have showed she cared more. She could have communicated differently. Now, this also gets into like expectations of this friend. Like maybe this friendship has changed. Maybe this friend doesn't care as much. Maybe she doesn't have the tools or she's not equipped to care. Maybe she's not at this stage of life at 30, like she might not be have the bandwidth or interest to show up for you in the way that you want, which is really hard to accept. I mean, I've had to accept that about some relationships in my life recently. Like, I want it to be different with this person. I want this specific relationship in my life to be different, but this person, like, I don't need to take it personally. I'm not going to take it personally. So the way I interpret it is like, they either don't have the skills to be there for me the way I want, they don't have the bandwidth, or they're just not interested. And can I tolerate that? How can I better tolerate? Like, how can I accept that about this relationship? In what do I need to do myself so that I can continue to be a part of this relationship? And then I do those things on my own. For this, you need to ask yourself, like, okay, if this person is just not as emotionally intelligent or sensitive or communicative in the ways that I want my friendship to be, what does that mean? And maybe it means that you still invite her to stuff, but you accept beforehand that you know this about her, that she doesn't handle things as sensitively as you want, as you wish she would. So there might need to be some expectation management there, but you did ask that you want to say something. And I do think it's okay to, if this is a close friend, I think it's okay to address this here. I do agree that I don't think you should just be distant to hope she catches on. I think that distance is a very useful tool. I don't think we always need to tell people that we're being distant or why we're upset with them, but we shouldn't be distant as like a manipulation tactic. Like, don't be distant because you're hoping she'll notice and ask you what's wrong. That's a mess. Be distant because the distance is what's required for you to show up in this relationship and be a good friend. Like, that's okay. I don't think you need to tell someone you're doing that. You can just take the distance for yourself, but don't do it as a manipulation tactic. So I do think that you can say something. And I think it hurt my feelings that you didn't try to be there for my birthday weekend. I would have selected a weekend that worked for you if you had told me so. I feel like I've always loved celebrating you, and this is a weekend that I really would have loved to have you be a part of. Maybe you say something like that. I think it's also fair for you to acknowledge the position you're coming to this conversation from, which is, I'm planning this birthday alone. I'm single. And I don't think it's like, I'm single, woe is me. Like, I'm not suggesting that you feel that way. But since you wrote here that it is sometimes hard to go to all of these things and to not feel celebrated, I think it's okay to bring that up with this friendship. Like, that is a real, different stages of life, specifically around partnership and children, is something that drives friends apart when we don't talk about it. And I think you need to talk about it. I think you need to tell your friend how you feel. And a good friend, or a friend who's open to, wants to build this connection into your 30s while you are in different stages of life, will be open to that. They should be open to that. That doesn't mean it won't be uncomfortable. They might feel a little uncomfortable at first, but it has to be talked about. Part of the reason this is hurtful for you is because you've been going to weddings and engagements and baby showers and bachelorettes for the last 10 years. And you're feeling like it's hard sometimes having to plan this all for myself. And I want to have a celebratory weekend with my friends. And it really hurt that you didn't even try to be there. It didn't seem like you even cared. And I love you, and I want our friendship to be strong, and that's why I'm telling you this. It's vulnerable for me to admit what I'm admitting, and I just feel disappointed. I think you could say something honest like that. And I would encourage you to try to bring the understanding of, like, maybe the weekends really just didn't work with the in-laws visiting, and it's disappointing, but you understand that. What you hoped, though, is that the friend would have shown that she cared about missing it and tried to be a part of it, or tried to make up for it in some way. Tell her what you were looking for, right? Tell the friend what would have made things feel better for you. Tell the friend what would have made things feel better for you. Like, what type of reaction for her would have made you feel seen? And then we'll see if she can rise to that occasion. And she might not, right? She might not. She might think you're overreacting. She might XYZ, but based on how she responds, then you have the choice to decide what you're going to do about this friendship. The weekend is going to be so much fun. I know it's disappointing that she's not there, and that this has kind of bubbled up some of these complicated emotions around birthdays and achievement and singleness and all of that. But the weekend sounds incredible. And happy birthday. Happy 30th birthday. I will say 30s have been interesting. 30s have been interesting, but a couple days into 32, and I'm feeling really good with 2 feet firmly in my 30s. And I'm just really excited for you. Welcome to this new decade. I think overall, like, both of us are still so early in our 30s. I think the 30s as a whole are going to be an incredible fucking decade. I'm so excited to like get rid of the stuff that plagued me in my 20s, and that I spent my early 30s really trying to unlearn. Go listen to the episode about things I learned at 31 that are making me happier in 32. I really think those are another way to frame that episode, is like things I wish I learned in my 20s. And I'm happy for you. I'm happy for us. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. And that is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Follow the podcast wherever you listen on your podcast streaming platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you listen to this podcast on Apple or Spotify, please do me a favor. If you like it, go give it a 5-star review. That really helps new people find the show. Make sure you follow the podcast so that you get new episodes, and subscribe on YouTube if you like watching. You can find me on Instagram at afhayes. I often source questions for episodes in my stories there, so if you want to participate, that's a great place to find me. And I appreciate you all. Thank you for listening and being a part of this community, and I will see you next week. Bye.